Whenever I share the story, people often don't believe me, but I feel compelled to tell it. At the time, I was an 11-year-old child. We arrived at the church that Sunday like always, but something caught my attention. Standing in front of the main door was an elderly woman, watching people come and go with a gaze that seemed to go beyond time. She wore old-fashioned clothes, as if from another century, and her presence emanated an eerie calm. Curious about this woman, I asked my mother who she was, but she looked at me confused and insisted there was no one there. I was really surprised. The old woman was plainly visible to me. How could my mother not see her? The service continued as usual, but my mind was elsewhere, bothered by the mystery of the invisible old woman. When we left, I saw her again in the same spot, staring intently at the church. In a blink, she slowly walked away, until a soft mist covered her and she vanished without a trace. The next week, determined to solve the mystery, I went back to the service, this time with my grandmother. Unlike my mother, she did see the old woman. But when I asked her who it was, I noticed her expression suddenly change. Her normally calm face grew tense, and she avoided my gaze. She seemed reluctant to answer, appearing nervous and evasive. I couldn't understand why my grandmother was uneasy upon seeing the clear figure of a woman. I tried to follow her again like the previous Sunday, but this time there was no mist. As I followed the old woman, she became fainter and fainter, as if dissolving into the air. Step by step, she grew more transparent, until she completely disappeared in front of my bewildered eyes. That afternoon, I finally solved the mystery of the old woman who appeared at the church door and was only visible to some. While playing in the garden, I overheard my grandmother talking to my mother in hushed tones. The conversation was serious. My grandmother mentioned that the woman had come back, clearly referring to her. She told a story that sounded like it came straight out of a forgotten legend, about a local woman wrongly accused of witchcraft due to malicious gossip. She was ostracized and excluded by the community, and now, according to my grandmother, only those in their last years of life saw her as a kind of lesson or reminder. That was why the old woman only appeared to the elderly, who, in their day, had made her life miserable. What I never completely understood was why I could see her too, something I think about more and more as I get older. Maybe she allowed herself to be seen by me because, as a child, I would never be troubled by seeing her presence there, as I didn't know her, and she was using me to help people like my grandmother realize that what they saw was real and not just their imagination. This revelation left me thoughtful and somewhat moved. The figure of the old woman, isolated and alone, seemed to reflect the untold stories of many people wrongly judged and forgotten by history. Perhaps her presence wasn't a punishment but a reminder of the compassion and understanding we owe to others, regardless of gossip or prejudice.